Just to spite Dawes, I'm saying nothing. And you'll see why in a minute.
This is Partners in Crime with Adam Croft and Robert Dawes.
53 and counting, Bob.
Absolutely. And here we are getting stuck in. I must point out to listeners that, as we all know, Adam usually starts each episode with a lovely little witticism, a funny observation of life. But this week he couldn't think of anything to start, so he's going to put it in afterwards. So I've actually let the cat out of the bag. What may sound spontaneous and effortless going into the opening credits and music, whatever, will actually have been carefully worked out over several hours. So the gauntlet's slapped to the floor now. It's going to have to be really funny.
Yeah, I hope it was a good one. And yeah, thank you for breaking that little illusion for us there.
Yeah.
I can always rely on you.
So I'll talk about the weather. Mind you, do you know what? It was supposed to be cloudy today, and here we are with lovely blue skies in central Bedfordshire.
Highs of 14 degrees, I've been told.
The highs of 14 degrees. Oh, good grief.
How about that?
Yes.
I have spent the week bandersnatching.
I'm lost for words. What is that?
Have you not heard of it? It's the new Black Mirror standalone film. It's basically a choose your own adventure film.
Continue.
Well, you know Black Mirror. We've mentioned on the series before.
Yes.
Netflix series. It's a standalone adventure film called Bandersnatch. It's
it's not the one with Sandra Bullock, is it?
No.
It's not that one. No.
Effectively, you can find your way through this film with numerous different endings and numerous different events happening along the way. And every now and again, it will pop up on the screen and ask you to make a decision as to what happens next in the film. And there are numerous different endings, numerous different ways through. So it's kind of like half film, half computer game. It's bizarre, but brilliant at the same time.
Well, how do you operate it? I mean, how is it interactive on your television?
Using your remote control.
You use your actual...
Yeah. It will pop up at the bottom of the screen.
Godstick.
No, it will say, do you want to murder so-and-so or walk away? And you choose your option, and the action continues. But it's very, very clever because the option comes up and you've got 10-15 seconds in order to make your decision, but while it's doing that, it brings the option up slightly early, so the action actually continues on the screen. It doesn't kind of stop at any point waiting for you, so the film is continuously playing. So the actual bit where they kind of stitch in, I guess, what happens after your decision is seamless. So if you're just watching that kind of top half of the screen, it just looks as if it's a normal everyday film.
Well, this is fascinating. I mean, it's certainly someone who has never really played a video game in his life. I mean, this is quite dangerous in a way, because I could become full victim to becoming a late flowering interaction game.
We'll have you doing
soul.
We'll have you doing late night FIFA in no time.
Come on, you blues. Where do you actually see it?
On Netflix. Yeah,
it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
And it's
Bandersnatch.
called Bandersnatch. What does Bandersnatch mean? Is it German?
It's and it's the name of a game that the main character in the film is designing and programming. It's set in the 80s, I think 1984, which is based on a book from earlier days. I think Bandersnatch has a word. I think it was invented by Lewis Carroll. I think the creature originally. But yeah, it's a fascinating concept. It's very kind of Inception because, I'm not going to go too far into it because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but you do kind of actually wonder by the end of it what is reality and what isn't. It's very, very cleverly done.
That's my life anyway. Kind
of crimey in many ways. But I think the beauty of Black Mirror is that it doesn't really have a genre.
Well, I mean, it's so innovative, isn't it? I mean, they're quite brilliant. I mean, this is. I'm gonna have to play this now, aren't I?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the TV equivalent of the old choose your own adventure books you used to get as a kid, where you'd read and it gets to the end and you say, what do you want the character to do? To do this, go to page 193. To do this, go to page 257. and you go to that page and carry on.
Is it hard? Is it hard to pick up? And
No.
I mean, I'm talking for me, not for you.
No, you've literally got two options at the bottom of your screen, and you move left or right and press to choose which one you want to do, and that's it. And then the film carries on playing. It starts off very simple. It gives you a bit of training. The first couple of options are all very straightforward, like what cereal you want to eat in the morning, it's very, very simple, and also a very, very clever concept. It must have been such a pain in the backside to film, though.
Well,
because I had to film every single permutation that came about through different decisions that were made. So you're kind of filming the same film, 10, 20 times with 10, 20 different endings and different ways you can go
sounds
through.
like filming anyway. I mean, you have to film even one scene at least that number of times. But what's that? It's great. Well, I mean, I can see one huge challenge for someone of my limited technical skills. But the biggest challenge for me playing Bandersnatch is trying to get the controls off my children in the first place, which tends to be... I
would say it's 95% film and 5% game. I mean, you're only really kind of choosing between two binary options each time. It's not, so you haven't got to kind of control characters or anything like that. So and even if you don't want to make a choice, it will default to a choice for you. So
good Lord. Well, I think that sounds very exciting. Strangely coming after the Truman Show. I know it's another side of it.
Yeah, this is what kind of made me think about it, actually, after we had that chat last week. And that's what made me think, actually, people have been talking about Bandersnatch. I'm going to have a go at that.
Well, I'm going to have a go too. That sounds absolutely terrific. Right, well, I'm going to launch in, actually, with the thing about Partners in Crime, as all listeners know now, is the crime fiction umbrella which we sit under every day that we record this. It's a broad church, and whatever genre crime is fictionalised in, we cover, be it books, of course, through Kobo, but also television, film, radio and theatre. So I'm going to kick off today with a new HBO series, certainly in the UK, but not in the States, where I think it came out in March of last year, or it probably did over here too, but I'm only catching up with it. It is a show with the unlikely title of Barry, which sounds a bit like a sort of 1970s British sitcom title, but it is the most extraordinary thing I've seen. Barry is an American dark comedy, and by the dark I mean pretty black in places, created by Alec Berg and Bill Hader, who also stars. Now, the premise is Barry is a character called Barry Berkman. And the series follows him, who is a former United States Marine who works as a low-rent hitman in the Midwest, Cleveland, I think it is. Lonely and dissatisfied in his life, he begrudgingly travels to Los Angeles to kill someone and ends up finding an accepting community in a group of eager hopefuls within the LA theatre scene. It sounds an extraordinary conceit, but I think it's one of the funniest things I've seen in years. It's brilliantly written, and it also stars one of my all-time favourites, the legendary Henry Winkler, better known for many generations of people as the Fonz from Happy Days. Well, here he is now. Both he and the series creator and leading man, Bill Hader, won Primetime Emmy Awards. Bill Hader for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series, and Henry Winkler Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series. And when I say it's black, this is a series which is quite extraordinary. He goes to Los Angeles. He gets caught up with I think it's a Chechen crime ring of people hitting on each other and blowing each other up and torturing each other and what have you. But while following his hit victim, the person that he has been sent to assassin, you can't assassin someone.
You can now.
Well, you can now. Assassinate. He wanders into this acting class, which is run by this acting guru, played by Henry Winkler, called Gene Cousineau. So if you're an actor, it will actually chill you to the bone, because the Cousineau character is absolutely brutal in his taking apart the particular talents of those people who pay lots of money to be his students in this acting class. But it's quite hilarious, and this hitman, who, let's face it, is a bit of a psychopath, begins to actually feel things one feels for the very first time in his life.
Through acting?
Through acting. He's thrust into this scene. The person he's been actually sent to bump off persuades him to do a scene from a play, which I won't go into detail. It sounds very unlikely, but believe me, it absolutely works and unfolds, and I adore it. So it is out on HBO. It's available in the UK, and I should imagine it's available now worldwide. They've had their second series greenlit, and I think it's probably already filmed, because that's coming out, let's see, it's coming out in March of this year, so that's next month, so I should imagine that's already in the can. So first recommendation of the week is Barry.
Lovely.
A black comedy of the blackest kind, but quite hilarious.
Well, some of the reading I've been doing, I mentioned, I don't know if it was last week when you were here or the previous week with Rachel Amphlett, that I'd been reading Dr. Richard Shepherd, Dick Shepherd's book Unnatural Causes.
That was me, and that was...
That was you.
That was me.
Yeah, the life and many deaths of Britain's top forensic pathologists. I just wanted to say, I'm still reading it. But
Great, that's breaking news.
Join us again next week.
Yeah, well, he'll still be reading it.
But I wanted to say that because it just seems to be getting better and better. I've got a notebook full of notes and things that I'm making, but it's not kind of preachy in terms of the information and, this is how forensics works. But there's little bits of information slipped in that I'm just jotting down every now and again that he happens to mention in passing. But it just gets better and better. It's enthralling in the terms of, if you're a crime writer or somebody interested in crime fiction, you've got, somebody who's been there and done it, a real life memoir. It's also very touching. It's, goes into sort of how he ended up becoming a pathologist, how it affected him and his family, some of the disasters that he saw, and, working with the families of those affected. It's just a brilliant read. I had it recommended to me by numerous people before I picked it up, and I saw it on bookshelves, and I thought, I must get that at some point. And eventually I did, and then I actually finally got around to reading it, and I'm very, very glad I did. It's a really, really fascinating book, so I'm banging on about it again.
And it's in hardcover.
I don't know if it's out in paperback yet, but mine is in hardcover. It's, like I say, so many people had recommended it to me, so I'm just doing the same. They finally wore me down, and I'm glad they did, so I'm hoping to do the same through this podcast by saying get Unnatural Causes by Dr. Richard Shepherd.
Well, yes, but I might just nick your one. It looks great.
You can do when I've finished with it in about November.
Yes, each week we'll have a chapter by chapter update on your progress through Unnatural
Paragraph
Causes.
by paragraph, at the rate I read.
So, we're talking about hardbacks. On the 7th of February, there was a release of a new hard cover novel by one of our great favourites, who we all adore. Well, I say we all adore. We certainly all adore at Partners in Crime, and I'm sure all our listeners do too, and that's Ellie Griffiths. It's the 11th instalment in the Dr. Ruth Galloway series called The Stone Circle. It's a series that Val McDermid says is my favourite series. And so there we are. That's praise indeed. And I think Val's absolutely right. It's a fantastic series. For those who are new to it or have not heard of the Ruth Galloway series, it follows the investigations of forensic archaeologist Ruth Galloway and her police friend, Detective Chief Inspector Nelson, in Norfolk. And other places if you follow the whole series. So this new one is it's hit the shops and certainly various other outlets. One of them I'm sure will be Kobo, if not now, very, very soon. DCI Nelson has been receiving threatening letters telling him to go to the Stone Circle and rescue the innocent who is buried there. He is shaken, not only because children are very much on his mind, with Michelle's baby due to be born, but because although the letters are anonymous, they are somehow familiar. They read like the letters that first drew him into the case of the crossing places, and to Ruth. But the author of those letters is dead. Or are they? Meanwhile, Ruth Galloway is working on a dig in the Salt Marsh, another henge known by the archaeologists as the Stone Circle, trying not to think about the baby. Then bones are found on the site and identified as those of Margaret Lacey, a 12-year-old girl who disappeared 30 years ago. As the Margaret Lacey case progresses, more and more aspects of it begin to hark back to that first case of the crossing places, and to Scarlett Henderson, the girl Nelson could have saved. The past is reaching out for Ruth and Nelson, and its grip is deadly. Well, there we are. I mean, it sounds as if you will have needed to read the Crossing Places, the first of Ellie Griffith's Ruth Galloway series. You don't. It is standalone, and of course you can actually go back and read the Crossing Places afterwards. But why not read the Crossing Places first? Why not read all 11? This is if it's Val's favourite series, that should say all you need to know about it. They're great books by one of our best crime fiction writers. So there we are. That is available now, as I say, in hardcover, and it will soon be followed by every other version available, electronic and other. So that's it. Stone Circle, Ellie Griffiths.
Stone Circle, lovely jubbly. That will, of course, be available at Kobo. I'll tell you about that in just a moment, because I was going to mention and almost forgot. We spoke to Ellie Griffiths. It was episode 8. If you want to go back and have a listen to that and find out more about
a
the
lovely
series.
Interview with. She's great, Ellie. I mean, she spends an awful lot of time travelling the country, travelling the world, and she's one of the best talkers on the circuit. Hugely entertaining, full of stories, full of insights into how she writes her books. She has 2 series of books. This one, of course, being her Ruth Galloway series, and the other one, which is well, look her up on Kobo, and you will see, because she lives in Brighton, and there's a wonderful series there that a period series set in the 1950s that might tickle your fancy as well.
Yeah, episode 8. That chat with Ellie Griffiths. All of her books are available from Kobo, who very kindly sponsor this podcast.
Yay.
If you are a new reader to Kobo, if you've not had a book from Kobo before, head over to kobo.com, choose the book you would like to read, and if you enter the promo code CRIME at the checkout, they will give you 90% off of that first book. And if you're a continuing customer of Kobo, if you have claimed books there before, then exclusively as a listener to Partners in Crime, you can use the promo code PARTNERS at the checkout, and they'll give you 40% off of all your purchases moving forward. We mentioned last week as well about $30 limit. That is per purchase, by the way, per transaction. So
well, that is wonderfully generous.
yeah, you can order up to $30 worth of books.
Well, I've already taken advantage of
off.
that. It's a fantastic offer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, as I said last week, my gob is smacked, and it remains so. 1 week later.
Well, why would you read on anything else if you can get virtually half price off of every book that you buy from now on in? That's a phenomenal offer. Everyone listening to this can get 40% off of all the books they buy if they get them from Kobo, and you don't need a Kobo device either.
You don't need a Kobo device.
I mentioned that before on this show. You can download the free app for your phone or your tablet, and you can read on there, or you can buy one of their fantastic e-readers as well if you prefer that.
And they are great too.
Yes,
but I mean, that's a wonderful facility. That gives you. Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kobo.
Thank you very much indeed.
Right, so we have I have one other recommendation now, and this is a new series that started on BBC One at 9 o'clock on this last Sunday, which is the 17th of February. I'm sure it will be available on iPlayer and on platforms around the world. It is a detective series called Baptiste. Now, that name will ring a bell for many people who were fans of The Missing, which was hugely successful. The 2 hugely successful series. The first starred who was the first one? Nesbitt. I always want to say Darren Nesbitt. James Nesbitt. Darren Nesmith was a character actor, wonderful character actor. Played baddies in the 60s and 70s. Still alive, I think.
Wasn't him though.
Yeah, it wasn't him. No, it's James Nesbitt. A very, very different. But he was in the first one, and the second one starred the lovely David Morrissey and Keeley Hawes, and written by brothers Harry and Jack Williams, hugely talented writers of crime drama on television, who are doing incredibly well. But instead of coming up with a third series of The Missing, they have taken one of its leading characters, the detective Baptiste, Julien Baptiste, and have moved him to Amsterdam, where he's living with his family, and he is brought out of retirement by the police commissioner to investigate the disappearance of a young local sex worker in the red light district of Amsterdam. Well, I've seen the first one, and I have to say I think it's very good. I'm definitely sticking with it. It's got an extraordinary cast. For lovers of, I've got to get this pronunciation right, Cheki Cario, the French-Turkish actor who plays Julien Baptiste. It'll be a welcome return to his character, played with great simplicity and charm, and you just can't keep your eyes off him. And also by the UK's very own Tom Hollander. I've worked with Tom, and he's a terrific actor. He's one of those actors who...
Where's my name drop alert button gone?
But no, he's wonderful, and he's one of those actors you just can't stop watching. You know, he's absolutely great. So the two of them make a great pairing in this drama series. So yeah, I think it's that sort of Euro noir, Nordic noir. I was worried that it might be a bit of a hybrid. You know, I mean, if you watch The Bridge, if you watch The Killing, if you watch... have you seen Spiral by any chance? Let's not go there.
I've seen one.
Yeah, if you've seen Spiral...
the most expensive episode I've ever watched.
Yeah. But, I mean, if you love those series as I do, you will hopefully like these. The person I was watching it with did say at one point, she said, I'm enjoying this, she said, but would we think it was even better if it was just subtitles? And that made me think, actually, because of course it goes from subtitles to English, from English to and whatever. It can be a little confusing to some people, I guess. But it's a first episode, and I would give it an 8 out of 10 for a first episode. The story is about... obviously some form of abduction or whatever, set in the grimy underworld of international crime. There's a very nasty villain in this, who's obviously a psychopath and a ringleader and drugs and people trafficker and goodness knows what else.
All round nice chap.
I mean, these are things that we have seen before. I mean, Spiral has done them, the Bridge, the Tunnel. We've covered this ground before, so one has to ask: is there anything new, and what particular spin the Williams brothers can actually bring to this? That remains to be seen, but it's got off to a cracking start. So, as I say, it's on BBC One on Sunday nights at 9 o'clock. You can, if you haven't seen the first one, you can, of course, catch it up on Catch Up. And those of you from around the world, look out on the BBC platforms and have a look, if you will. That is Baptiste.
Well, out with the new and in with the old. I've been reading some classic crime this week, actually, between my dips into unnatural causes. And I'm about halfway through a Paul Temple book, The Tyler Mystery. Francis Durbridge. Are you familiar with the Paul Temple books?
Well, yes, and I was back and I knew the actor who played him on television in the 60s, very famously.
Of course he did.
Francis Matthews, who was Paul Temple for a whole generation of television watchers in the television adaptations in the 60s and 70s.
Well, yeah, classic crime from 1957, this one. And you know what, sometimes you just know what kind of thing you want to read. And I thought, I want something, a kind of a classic crime, a short read, not the Agatha Christie's, but something perhaps a little less mainstream. And Paul Temple, as you say, is still fairly mainstream. Francis Durbridge, The Tyler Mystery is what I've been reading. It opens with some action straight away. It kicks off very quickly. It's only 250 pages, something like that long.
Quicker through that than Unnatural Causes, then.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've read a Paul Temple book, actually. So I've I was almost coming to it fresh, and had the thing which I'm sure a lot of people have had when they've read these for the first time, going, oh yes, that's the one with a wife called Steve. Which jumps out at you at first.
Well, yes, I suppose it would, even in these extraordinary times. But
well, this was 1957, so it was.
So you're reading that really because you're deep in your own period, well, sort of contemporary piece with a golden age atmosphere with Kempston Hardwick. So has that sort of led you to start reading books from that particular era? Does it help enhance?
Quite possibly, actually. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, they are written in a similar kind of style to this, I guess, and they are kind of an homage to the classic crime. So yeah, I didn't think about that. Maybe that is exactly where my headspace is right now.
I've never read Francis Durbridge. I've seen a couple of adaptations of his plays, and his son, I think, was a very successful literary agent or whatever. But so I've seen a couple of those. Bill Kenwright has done a couple on occasions, and yes, he's a classic. What's that one called? The Tyler Mystery.
The Tyler Mystery. Francis Durbridge. Yeah, it's a Paul Temple mystery.
Oh, wow.
Very, very good. I'm really enjoying that. So looking forward to hopefully getting stuck back into that this evening.
How do you find with your Kempston Hardwick? I mean, it's set now. It's contemporary. But it has this real feel of a much older style of a detective. I don't mean that in a bad way. So it works wonderfully well. I mean, I suppose you could say that Midsummer to some degree has that feel. Death in Paradise has that feel. I mean, they are shows that are the opposite to Luthers or Baptistes or what have you. But what made you set Kempston Hardwick now instead of actually putting the character in the 30s, 40s, or even 50s?
I couldn't be bothered to do the research and find out what life was like back then, basically.
Is the honest answer.
But I like the fish out of water kind of stories anyway, and I think they are quite. The Kempston Hardwick books are quite funny. He says, as the one who writes all the jokes. But I think that it does give rise to a lot of comedic potential, having this guy who's essentially a Victorian throwback. Wandering around the streets in the modern day, solving murders and mysteries. It's great fun.
The plotting and the stories are real, and the murders are real, and the life and death element of it, and the investigation is real. But your tongue is firmly in your cheek when it comes to the relationships, certainly between the two main investigators.
And in general, I have a lot of fun writing them. Hopefully, people have a lot of fun reading them. I think if you read my other stuff, if you read my kind of gritty crime or psychological thrillers, it's almost as if somebody else writes the Kempston Hardwick books. They're a completely different style. So yeah, don't go in expecting the same thing, but go in expecting lots of fun, some traditional mysteries and puzzles to get your head round, and hopefully some humour along the way. So yeah, working on book 5 in that series at the moment.
Have you got a title yet?
No, I've got a couple of potential working titles, but nothing that I'm going to reveal on a podcast, if that's what you're asking.
No, I wouldn't presume.
Yeah, that's hopefully be out in the not too distant future.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that a bit nearer the time.
Yeah, we will. So here we are then. It's looking at the clock now. It's 27 minutes, 43, 44, 45 seconds past our particular hour.
Well, as we said before, we don't get paid for overtime, so we should probably end it about there.
Oh no, we're going to do the full 30 minutes.
Oh, we're going to sit here and talk for the next.
Oh yes, I'm going to
2 minutes and 2
demand
seconds.
little gems of crime literary genius to actually drip from your lips.
As my finger was hovering over the theme tune button.
Well, yes, you keep talking. I'm having a cup of coffee.
Okay. Well, I have the power, so I might just do this.
Partners in Crime was presented by Adam Croft and Robert Dawes and produced by Adam Croft. The theme tune was by the Caesareans. The Partners in Crime logo and imagery were designed by Stuart Beisch. Partners in Crime is sponsored by Kobo, your favourite local bookshop, perfected.